This is a special space weather alert due to inclement solar flare activity. We have coronal mass ejection plasma shock waves coming to Earth from X7 and X9 solar flares. Each produced an eruption of charged material from the corona. Our last two videos hit the X7 event and how the CME is expected to arrive tomorrow night, Friday, October 4th. NOAA is forecasting level 1, 2, or 3 geomagnetic storms, somewhere between mild to strong conditions, with a good chance for aurora. But now we've got more. Right after the morning show today, an X9 solar flare erupted from the same sunspot group, and it has also produced a coronal mass ejection. The sunspot may not be done yet, so we're going to keep watching, but the last couple hours I've been eagerly awaiting updates to the ultraviolet imagery and the coronagraphs. SDO images pretty clearly show that a CME was released, and the early images from SOHO show another full halo CME, in addition to other CMEs going off the limbs. This one was stronger, likely faster, and is traveling in the cleared wake of the first CME, so it is likely to arrive Saturday, October 5th. Nobody has official storm forecast yet, but if both end up hitting in close succession, we're looking at KP 7 or 8 at a minimum, level 3 or 4 geomagnetic storm conditions, and another low-latitude auroral event, possibly lasting for 2 or 3 days. Now, this is not quite at the scary kill shot level, but there's a greater than 50% chance of network outages, power disruption, and about a 10% chance of major electrical fires, transformer explosions, infrastructure failures, and grid damage. We will have more if necessary, and at very least, we'll be back in the morning for the daily update. Be safe, everyone.
Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday, October 3rd, 2024, about 9:48 a.m. California time here. 2.0, the latest quake across the area of Oklahoma, it looks like. Let's go ahead and chat about some space weather activity. Goodness, had a super strong flare this morning. In fact, the strongest flare of this solar cycle, an X9.0. This marks the second X flare here in the last couple days. The previous X flare, an X7.15, which was the third largest solar flare this cycle. But this one right here pretty much blew out the previous record for this solar cycle. Now, that's not the strongest flares that we can see out here. Actually, they get much stronger than that. One of the largest ever recorded, excuse me, was a X45, I should say. I was looking at some information here back in 2003, X40 plus. The exact number is X45, and that is also known as the Halloween solar storms, the superstorms there that created auroras all over the place there back in 2003 from a number of large events, including this X45 and of course subsequent CMEs that were directed. As you can see down the list here, quite a bit happening there in the early 2000s, X28, X24, and of course ours right now, right? The most recent one in X9.0. So pretty large, but not as large as what we can see. And of course we are entering into solar maximum here next year. About June 2025 is when we're supposed to peak in terms of solar maximum. So we still have a little ways to go before we reach the peak of all this solar activity. So obviously there is potential now to see some significant aurora events coming up over the next couple nights. Tonight's forecast here, just real quick, is KP index up around a 6. It could reach around a 7. So this forecast here just shows the G2 region. And we're expecting a G3 class solar storm. So that would bring down the view line much further, potentially down into Northern California over the next couple nights here. Notice KP index up around the 7 between the 03 and 0600 time frame. And then also again at 2100 to 0 on that UTC time. So tonight, tomorrow night, look fairly spectacular in terms of aurora potential. Now, this is the result of the X flare that we seen a couple days ago. Still waiting on some information here on the latest very strong X flare, the X9.0. According to Kevin here on the solarham.com site, there was an Earth-directed CME. There's the outline of it. Of course, got to wait for the latest information here from the Space Weather Prediction Center on how thick or dense this plasma cloud is. That will determine how sufficient the auroras will be in the coming days once the arrival of the CME from this flare. Tonight and tomorrow is a result of the CME that was associated with this X flare here a couple days back. So watch for tonight. Things could be quite active in terms of the aurora possibilities. So let's look at this solar flare here, or this sunspot area. The culprit of the most recent flare is going to be AR 3842. Of course, that is the same sunspot responsible for the 7.1 here a couple days ago. Here's an image from last night. Notice quite a bit of complexity here within that central core. I mentioned that last night. Today, roughly about the same here. I'm not seeing any weakening structure within that sunspot. It's obviously currently looking directly at us. And there's a number of sunspots over here further to the west that are fairly complex as well. So this whole regional area, got to watch here over the next couple days as it is in the Earth-directed view. If we get more large CMEs or more large flares with subsequent CMEs, we could be really talking about some neat-looking auroras coming up over the next couple nights or so. Also a massive region here on the northeastern quadrant of the sun, and it looks like maybe another area of development back further around the bend. But for right now, we got this regional sunspot looking at us, a couple different groups here, but 3842 is the source of the X flares here recently. Look at the UV filter flaring out here from this massive sunspot. Look at that. Looks like this one wants to produce a massive flare. That's that large sunspot area out here, 3848, which is now a little bit closer in the Earth-directed view. Currently flaring with what looks like to be some M-flare activity, consistent M-flare activity here. And I believe that's from that sunspot here that's just consistently flaring right now. So we'll watch that. That's somewhat pointing away from Earth, obviously. But it does look like it wants to produce a significant flare. We'll keep an eye on that for sure. All right, so obviously an elevated flare threat, 35% chance for X flare, M flare at 75, and C flare around 99% chance or so. G3 storm, G2 storm, and I'm sure this will continue to enhance as we get further information on the data from this most recent solar flare in X 9.0, the strongest of this solar cycle. By the way, the previous record holder was going to be this X 8.7 back in May. This was one of the sources that produced numerous flares and Earth-directed at the same time. There were subsequent CMEs that produced the May aurora events all over the place. I'm sure you guys remember that, seeing auroras down in Southern California, Mexico, Florida. I finally got to see the auroras here in Northern California for the first time in my life ever. And it's pretty cool. A whole bunch of pink colored skies. You could actually see the curtains of the solar wind coming in, hitting the areas way up above the surface there into the atmosphere. It's pretty neat looking. So whether we're going to see that again from the series of X flares, we'll have to wait and see what happens. It's all dependent also on a number of factors, including the solar wind stream data, which is a BZ component right here in the red. That's right now fairly, let me see here, let me zoom in, look at the data. A little bit of up and down, up and down here. It needs to be below this line, which is at 0. If we get this open here, if we get these dots, this data coming in, and it stretches further south, then that will allow the amplification for the auroras tonight. But right now, you know, we don't have any sign of that CME impact, which is expected a little bit later on this evening. But we'll watch that. That could either suppress the auroras or allow for some awesome looking aurora borealis tonight and tomorrow. So we'll keep an eye on this data here.